Hello and welcome back to our Dominaria United Limited set review. Today we're going to be reviewing Red. If you haven't already, I would check out the playlist I have up in this corner over here regarding all the other colors we've gone over, including starting with White. In the White set review, I go over more of my methodology of how I grade these cards and kind of my process here. A reminder that I'm putting out 2 videos a day every day this week in order to get all this information out in time for the release of Dominaria United on MTG Arena and also the pre-releases. So with that, let's get started reviewing Red. Up first, we have Flowstone Infusion. It's 1 red for an instant. Target creature gets +2, -2 until end of turn. I like this basically as a shock. There's other ways to use it, but I give this card a C+. In general, a 1 mana removal spell is pretty powerful. C+ it is. Up next, we have Hammerhand, 1 red mana for an Aura enchantment. It's enchant creature. When Hammerhand enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and gains haste. We've seen this kind of ability before. Red is nice to have creatures be unblockable. But that said, like I said before, I'm not a fan of Aura enchantments. You can get 2 for 1 pretty easily with a card like this. I'm just going to go straight to saying this is a D-. Up next, we have Viashino Branch Rider. For 1 red mana, you have a 1/1 Viashino Warrior creature with kicker 2 and a green. It has haste. If Viashino Branch Rider was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Pay 2 and a red. Viashino Branch Rider gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I kind of like this little guy. It's flexible as a 1/1 on turn 1, which I'm kind of hoping not to use because that's a little underpowered, but it's an option. But as a 3/3 for 4 with an expensive but usable pump, it's pretty good. It's definitely lower than a standard playable, and I'd like to avoid it, but its flexibility with the pump that pays off. It might pay off with Enlist, for example. I think it's a playable card. I debated a D+, but I think it has enough with its pump to be able to be a C-. So C- it is. Up next, we have Furious Bellow. 1 and a red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Scry 1. These tricks always tempt me. They go up in aggressive formats to playable range, but usually they're solid Ds. So far, the set is looking like it'll be a D. As I went further on, reviewing the rest of the red cards, it does look like red will be pretty fast, so I might change my mind on this, but I'm going to start it off with a D. I usually don't want to play these, maybe 1 as filler. Up next, we have Get to Amplifier. 1 and a red for a 1/2 human wizard creature with kicker 2 and a blue. When Get to Amplifier enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Get to Amplifier gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So, bouncing a creature is nice, but it's a little expensive for that, especially for the creature that you get in return. I don't see it getting +2/+0 often enough to make it good. I debated a C-, but I'm going to go with D+ for now. If you're in these colors and need a 2-drop, you'll play it, but D+ it is. Up next, we have Goblin Picker. 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin creature. Pay 1 red and tap it. Discard a card. You can draw a card. Alright, so 2 mana for a 2/2 that tacks on a cheap rummage. I'm in for that. I would give this a solid C. Up next, we have Lightning Strike, a common reprint. 1 and a red for an instant. Lightning Strike deals 3 damage to any target. I always love Lightning Strike. In my head, this is at least a B-. I'm going to go B- here. It does draw me into red. It also should kill usually over 50% of the creatures in a set by quite a bit. We'll do a set review analysis of how the power and toughness are on creatures in a later video. That's not for today, but the point is, it'll have a lot of targets. Up next is Smash to Dust. 1 and a red for a sorcery. Choose 1. Destroy target artifact. Destroy target creature with Defender, or Smash to Dust deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Alright, so I don't usually like cards like this. I will say the versatility on this one is pretty wide range, but usually you're going to want to use it for the Smash to Dust deals 1 damage effect. I would give this a sideboard card. I think in all three of these situations, like, you could always face a deck that doesn't care about any of these, and this is just a dead card. And whenever you have a dead card, you probably shouldn't be main boarding it in limited, so put this as a sideboard card. Up next, another common reprint, Thrill of Possibility. For 1 red, instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. This is always nice to kind of filter through it's kind of your red draw spell, right? This is usually a D+, unless there's some graveyard mechanic that makes it even better to get things in your graveyard with a discard. That's not really the case here. I'll give this a D+. Up next, we have Yavimaya Steel Crusher, 1 red for a 2/2 Ape Warrior creature with Enlist. Pay 1, sacrifice Yavimaya Steel Crusher, destroy target artifact. I'll take a 2/2 that you can enlist for 2. And it's also nice that it can blow up an artifact when you need to. I think this is a solid C. Up next, you have Flowstone Cavu, 2 and a red for a 2/3 Cavu creature with Menace. Pay a red, Flowstone Cavu gets +1/-1 until end of turn. Alright, so it's interesting to put the +1/-1 ability on a creature with Menace, because they are going to have to block it with 2 creatures, and if you kind of get your option of when you want to use this. If you need to kill both their creatures, you could pump this up to kill both of them potentially, or if they don't, you can even pump it up to just deal more damage in combat. I like this card a good amount. It doesn't blow me away. I think it's a solid playable. I give this a C. Up next, we have Kelan's Strike Team. For 2 and a red, you get a 3/1 human warrior creature with kicker 1 and a white. When Kelan's Strike Team enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. As long as Kelan's Strike Team entered the battlefield this turn, creatures you control have haste. So, I didn't like in white the 4 mana get 3 1/1s. But an acceptable 3-drop option that has haste and can give you the option to pay 5 mana to get a 3/1, 1/1, and another 1/1 that all have haste. I like that a good amount. I don't think this pulls me into red, but I'll give it a C+ for now. I was wondering if that might be kind of high given the base case of this is a 3/1 haste for 3. But I'm going to trust the designers on this one. It does seem like red-white really does want to go wide, and I'm going to trust that you can make that happen. So with that, I think this will be a card you want to pick up for that archetype and give this a C+. Up next, we have Coalition Warbrute, 3 and a red for a 3/4 Minotaur Berserker creature with Enlist and Trample. I like Enlist when it's on creatures that have Evasion or Trample, and so this is a decent rate creature to begin with. A 4 mana 3/4 with Trample is fine base rate. When you enlist with the Trample, I think it makes it quite a bit better. Not a pull into red, but I think this is a C+, and I do think that this is a creature that you will be wanting to push through the last remaining damage in red. Up next, we have Enthrall to the Pit. 3 and a red for a sorcery with kicker 2 and a black. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, sacrifice that creature at the beginning of the next end step. Alright, so you're stealing a creature for a turn play is now bundled together with the sacrifice play in the kicker. I like that. It's a bit expensive to pull it off. 7 mana in order to do the whole thing. Because of that, I'm not in love with this. I think it's a little bit expensive for what it does. But I'm going to give this a solid filler for right now. I think you may want to have one of these thrown into your black-red decks. I'm going to give it a D+. Up next, we have Jayas Firenato. For 4 and a red, it's a sorcery. Jayas Firenato deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, scry 1. I try not to have these 5 mana deal 5 to a creature or planeswalkers in my deck. It'd be much better if it can finish the opponent off and hit them too. These never do because, yes, they would be much better then. It's nice that they tack on Scry 1, so I like this a little more than I usually do, but I still think this is just on the higher end of filler. I would give this a D+. Up next, we have Maria's Outrider for 4 and a red. You get a 4/4 elf archer creature with reach. It has domain. When Maria's Outrider enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent. equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. Alright, so this is a decent reach creature that comes out swinging with some damage, which is what you want in red. But I do think you'll look for something a bit stronger for 5 mana. With that, I think this is a playable. I think it is on the lower end of playables, C-. Up next, we have Molten Monstrosity, 7 in red for a 5/5 healing creature. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and it has trample. This whole series of 7 to 8 mana creatures that reduce its costs, we have one in common in each color. These are all D pluses to C minuses. I do like this one quite a bit more on the higher end of the range. I think this one's a C minus. I don't think this is as good as the black one. I might bite my words on that one because this does do what red wants to do. To finish off a creature or opponent at the end, it tramples over them. They will need to kill this. If they don't, they can't chump, is the point. So I like this as a C minus. I also think this is a little easier to cast because, again, creatures are prevalent and limited. They have to be. And while your go wide might have some smaller power creatures, you should be able to pretty reliably cast this for 3 mana off. So 5 mana 5/5 trample is pretty decent. In general, I rate expensive cards like 5 mana plus pretty low because you can't fit too many of them into your deck. Maybe with Enlist, some of this stuff is better too, though. We'll see how this series of cards goes over time, but still, I'm not really willing to go above a C minus for this for now. All right, up next, we move on to the uncommons. We have Phoenix Chick. I like the artwork on this. 1 red mana for a 1/1 Phoenix creature. It has flying and haste. Phoenix Chick can't block. Whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay red. If you do, return Phoenix Chick from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. All right. So I like creatures that don't die, right? Card advantage is important. The problem here is attacking with 3 or more creatures can subject them to death. Usually the go wide, you want to acquire a bunch of creatures and swing all out at once. Now, granted, you can do that and pay the 2, and it has haste, so it helps join your team right away with that. But I don't think this is quite a pull in a red. I'm going to give this a solid C+. It's a good card. Up next, we have Electrostatic Infantry. It's 1 in a red for a 1/2 Dwarf Wizard creature with trample. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Electrostatic Infantry. Alright, wow. This becomes good after casting 1 instant or sorcery spell. It's already above rate, and it can grow to be insane after that. And it's not just a big beefy creature, it also has trample, so as it becomes beefy, it actually is getting through and dealing damage. The problem that happens with this card is order really does matter. You really want to try to get this out as a 2-drop later in the game. Yes, it can grow, but you hopefully in your blue-red decks have already dealt out your instants and sorceries mid-game there. I rated this as a B. I think I'm going to stick with a B because I do think that in the right deck, you really want this card, and it's going to be hard to deal with. In reality, it might play out a little bit worse with that order problem to be more like a B-, but I do think when I see this, it's pulling me into that archetype. So I'm going to go with B, and we'll see where it settles long-term. Up next, we have Fires of Victory. 1 in a red for an instant. Kicker 2 in a blue. If the spell was kicked, draw a card. Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of the cards in your hand. Alright, so my issue here is kind of thinking about how this plays out. You don't really, early in the game, it's fine. As you try to get up later into the game where where opponents are playing bigger creatures that you need to kill bigger, this gets worse because you're actually playing out your cards from your hand and having less cards in your hand as the game goes on. So it doesn't really scale up to kill big creatures. This is it's a fine playable. It's a removal spell. I'm a fan of that. And I do like that as the game goes on, at least it can replace itself with the kicker. So I'm definitely looking to play this in my blue-red decks. But I don't think this is even a C. I would rather be playing the other removal spells that we've seen prior to this. So I'm going to give this a C-. Up next, we have Sprouting Goblin, 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Druid with kicker green. When Sprouting Goblin enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, search your library for a land card with basic land type, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle. You may pay you pay a red, tap it, sacrifice a land, draw a card. All right, so base rate 2/2 for 2, fine. It can let you draw cards later in the game when you have too many land out. That's a nice bonus. So it's good early, good late. And then also with the kicker green, that I'll definitely pay that to get another land in my hand. I like all the scenarios of this card. It doesn't blow me away, but I'll be playing this every time I'm in red-green for sure, and most of the time that I'm in red. So I'm going to give this a C+. Doesn't pull me in, but solid card. Twinferno, 1 and a red for an instant, choose one. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, or target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. Alright, now this is a card with duality. I love the idea of copying spells when I can. That sounds great. I love the idea of being able to kill a creature for 2 when I can, attack on out, instant this with a double strike, and maybe save my own creature, perhaps. And I like the idea of this as a finisher. Put this on a trample creature or an unblocked creature and just double strike that, and you can finish them off. There's a lot of good options for this. I think this is a solid B. This pulls me into red. Up next, Yosha Declares War. 1 and a red for a saga with read ahead. First chapter, create a 0/2 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying named Ornithopter. Pay 2, tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. When you do, Yosha Declares War deals that much damage to a target creature or planeswalker. Or on third chapter, up to 1 target artifact you control becomes a creature with base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. Alright, so usually in Limited you aren't playing too many artifacts in your deck. We have not yet reviewed artifacts, so I don't know how good they are. I will say the storyline of Dominaria started with Urza and Mishra. It's more the Brothers' War, but Dominaria came from the Thran and the Thran artifacts and all that, so I hope there are some good artifacts here. But so let me reserve judgment until we go over artifacts here. At its base rate, though, I'm not really that impressed with this card. Unless you have many artifacts, you're not doing too much here. I'm almost always going to rely, I think, on using Chapter 1 to get my artifact Ornithopter into play. And then hopefully I have another one out where I can at least deal 2 damage to something. At that point, this becomes reasonable. And then Chapter 3 is a nice add-on, but you only get the 4/4 until end of turn. So I'm going to start this off fairly low at a C-. If I see enough powerful artifacts, I'll definitely come up on this. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm starting low and willing to come on up, depending on what I see. C- it is. I will say, I like how this matches the storyline here. I like that, Urza kind of escaped the outskirts of Argive in the desert where they were searching for artifacts and kind of ran away to Yosha. I won't ruin the whole story, but this fits the plot line quite well with the lore, and I like it. Up next, we have Balduvian Berserker. For 2 and a red, you get a 1/3 core Berserker creature with Enlist. When Balduvian Berserker dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Alright, when you do enlist this, you make this into a 2-for-1, effectively. And I do like me some 2-for-1s. It does take a bit of setup to make that happen. You do have to enlist a creature, which means, this can't have summoning sickness, because it's not attack, you need to attack with it. You need whatever creature you're enlisting to not have summoning sickness. And the opponent can kill this, prior to enlist or on their turn, or at which point this ends up not being as good of a card and its base rate's kind of low. With all that said, the fact that this should fairly reliably be a 2-for-1, even with some setup, does pull me into red. I would give this a B-. I will say a lot of times when you're judging cards, you need to judge by what they do immediately in the game, because your opponent is actively trying to disrupt you, right? And so if that was just like immediate 2-for-1, it'd be broken, right? I probably would just give that an A at that point as a bomb. But the fact that it does require quite a bit of setup and time that the opponent can disrupt does hurt it a lot. It is still a pretty threatening 2-for-1 that should happen most of the time. So it definitely is within that B range for me. Up next, we have Hurler Battle Hymn. 2 and a red for an instant. Pay 1 white. Hurler Battle Hymn deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell was kicked, you gain 4 life. Alright, so we're scaling up the amount of damage removal in red. We had a 2 mana deal 3. We effectively had a 1 mana deal 2. It was minus 2 toughness. And we have a 3 mana deal 4. I'm in for that. I like a 3 mana deal 4. Especially when it has the upside with the kicker of gaining life. I'll give this a B-. I do think this pulls me into red. Doesn't blow me away, but pulls me into red. Up next, we have Warhost's Frenzy. For 2 and a red, you get an instant with Kicker Black. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, whatever creature you control dies this turn, draw a card. Alright, so this is the instant version of the only card I graded in the A range so far. So that bodes well for this being good. It's not a permanent, so I won't give it as good of a grade, but I do think this is a B+. The fact that this is an instant and you can play it right after your opponent blocks blows me away. Like, in my mind, to keep this reasonable power, you'd want to make this a sorcery. But it's an instant, and it does exactly what you want to do, and especially in Go Wide. Give all your creatures +2/+0, and then get more cards to refuel your likely depleted hand. Sure, I'll take that. B+ it is. Excited for this card. I'll be picking it really highly. Up next, we have Dragon Whelp. 2 red for a 2/3 dragon creature with flying. Pay 1 red. Dragon Whelp gets +1/+0 until end of turn. If this ability has been activated 4 or more times this turn, sacrifice Dragon Whelp at the beginning of your next end step. Alright, so its base rate is like perfectly base. 4 mana, 2/3 flyer. Just that wouldn't be good, but it's an acceptable rate. The fire breathing that's on it makes this good. It's not enough to pull me into red, but I do think this will be useful in games where you play red. You want to finish off the opponent, and this will fly over them, and you can pump it up. And honestly, like, in limited, you'll usually have quite, 2 colors plus mana. So you might not be able to activate this more than 4 times anyway. But if you have access to more red mana, you might be able to pay this 5 or 6 times and just kind of end the game there. Even though your Dragon Whelp would die in a turn, if your opponent's dead, that doesn't matter. So I like this card. I'm going to give this a C+. Next up, Hurler Cyclops. 3 red for a 5/4 Cyclops creature. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Hurler Cyclops deals 1 damage to any target. This ability tends to be pretty good in these go-wide strategies. I do think you're going to need this really in white-red to get enough small creatures to make this work. But this does pull me into white-red. It's not overpowered, but 5 mana for a 5/4 is perfectly fine. And that ability to attack all out and then sacrifice the 1/1s that get blocked to deal 1 damage, usually to your opponent in this case, you're just looking to finish them off, is pretty strong. It's enough to pull me in. I give this a B-. And that's it for the red for today. I'll be moving on to green next. Thank you everybody for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.